Okay, it is December 8th at about 8 p.m. GMT time, a little after. I'm going to look at some of the higher time frame charts, or 4 hour, so higher time frame compared to what we normally trade with triple threat. Start with pound New Zealand dollar. So we did break above most of the EMAs, or all the EMAs last week, and it looks like we're probably going to be resuming the uptrend, possibly. It's our longer term fib. You can see that we found support at 78.6 and we've made a good move up, breaking through the last of the EMAs last week. So if we take a look at the 4 hour, we've already made a good move up. One of these days I'll trade Monday after NFP because it always seems like there's good moves. Whether the setups are actually that easy to get with a decent RR, I'm not really sure. But we have major confluence down in this area if we pull back down that far this week. So we'll have the two 4 hour EMAs and the bullish Dynafib moving up to probably around the longer term 50% fib area. So we can see a PFT setup with a reaction above the breakback above the Dynafib. There is a trend line from daily. I cleaned it up on the 4 hour a little bit. It's kind of a triangle. So we could see a potential on the shorter time frames to take a counter trend short from around this area, maybe as high as the 23.6, which has MR1 just above it. Go back to the daily, you can see the triangle. So we've got about 1,100 pips. And inside the triangle, depending on if you're looking at the 4 hour of the daily, you've got 150 to 180 pips. And make a touch on the top. All right, let's look at pound CAD. So pound's been moving up, pretty much resuming the uptrend on some pairs. On the CAD, I still have downtrend fib. We have the 61.8 here, along with the daily 200. So we could see a move back down on the CAD off of that area. However, CAD's been pretty weak as well. They've been putting up weak numbers, and if oil continues to decline, oil price, then CAD will continue to weaken as well, which will give us an up move on the pound. So if we do get above this area, we can definitely look for a move back up to the prior high into this area. Pound odd, we made a nice up move. There's a 4 hour trend line here. So we've been making a decent move up. If we get above WR1 and this fib, then we can probably get a short trade up to WR2. We may get, depending on what happens over Asian session, we could get a reversal and perhaps have a counter trend short below this trend line on the smaller time frames, and I'll be looking for I'll pull back down to this weekly pivot area, and the 4 hour 55 is what I'll be looking for a reaction off of. Pound JPY, the yen pairs, I thought we might be in for a decent pullback. Last week we kind of went sideways the week before that, but instead of a pullback, we pretty much just continued the uptrend almost across the board on yen pairs. So again, I'll be looking for a pullback. I don't want to I don't want to counter trade the yen pairs just because they've been moving up so strongly with very minimal pullbacks compared to the distance that they've been moving up. So I will be looking for a reaction. We have a nice confluence. We will when the 4-hour 55 moves up a bit, but we've got this fib to 50%. Fib, if we fib last week's load high, we'll have the 4-hour 55, and we'll have already pushed into or back below at that point the WR and MR1. Or I'm sorry, that's the weekly pivot. So you can see on the 1 hour where it's a bit more room than what it appears on the 4-hour chart. All right, pound USD. So pound USD is pretty much the only pair that's still moving down as far as pound is concerned, and we are right here. We've touched the 61.8 and moved away a little bit. We're right at the 4-hour 55. So we'll have to see what happens there. If we get a break up, there is some decent roadblocks still. We have both the Dynafibs and WR1. This is and another midterm fib before we get to the 4-hour 200. So I definitely prefer a short on this pair, at least from the higher time frames. And it looks like we're in a pretty good position that we may get a short there if we don't break to the upside. So Euro New Zealand dollar, we're a little bit mixed. Here we haven't had the 34.55 cross back on the daily yet, but we did close up last week and we broke above all the major EMAs and kind of this kind of top area here. So I'll be looking for a pullback around the 38.2 to trade this back up. We may, again, of course, around the pivots, we may be able to get a counter trend trade in this area, or perhaps all the way up to WR2, depending on what happens over the Aussie-Australian session and into London. EuroCAD is pulled back nicely, and we're still in kind of a downtrend, but it appears to be weakening. We had this area for a long time that we haven't really stayed below for a good length of time, more than a day or two. So depending on what happens during this European session, we could see a reaction to the daily 55, this monthly pivot, and midterm fib to trade back down. And probably my first profit take is going to be in this area, because again, we do have CAD weakening. So I don't know how much more room this pair is going to have to move down before we start to get either more significant pullback or a trend reversal. So I'm going to be a little careful with this pair, but we'll see what happens there. Euro AUD, we continued with our up move. You can see that we're getting a good separation on the EMAs now in this area. So of course I'll be looking for a pullback as usual around this area. Be looking for a reaction to the 4-hour 55, so wherever that moves up to. Again, pretty much the same as with the other pairs. We could see if we move up some more during the Asian Australian session, during the European session, we could see a bounce down for a short counter trend off of WR1 or perhaps WR2. As you can see from the fibs, we're pretty extended. Euro JPY, pretty much the same as pound JPY. We're in a pretty good area. You see a bit more of a pullback, probably down to 61.8 in the 4-hour 55 for another move back up. Just make sure that we have good confirmation on these and that we're not going to see the major pullback this week where we missed it last week. So I'll switch over to my other platform for the lower range pairs. This is all New Zealand dollar. I still have my fib in place from a couple weeks ago, and we haven't gone. We've pretty much been sideways in this little area. I know it hasn't been too long. It's only been about 10 days at this point, maybe a little bit less that we've been in that area. So take it back here as well. Both these currencies have been weakening, so this is probably not a pair that I'm going to be looking to trade this week. And we have AUD-CAD, again, two currencies that have been weakening. Going to be mainly the result of oil on both of these pairs. However, we have been making a solid move down here, breaking through kind of this area. So I will be looking to see what happens again around the 4-hour 55. It looks like the 4-hour 55 is going to be a pretty good deciding factor for which way we're moving for the week on most of the pairs. On JPY, we're still mostly to the upside. We've got a cross down now, and you can see that we closed up, but we were very sideways for the week, and to start this week we've moved down. We can receive potentially what happens off of the 4-hour 200, but if you want to trade yen crosses, there are, or yen pairs, there's probably better ones to do it on. AUD USD, we moved down 132 pips last week, so pretty good continuation to the downtrend here. Again, it looks like we're going to have pretty good confluence with the 4-hour 55 and a midterm fib if we pull back up that way. We do have a pretty good distance to get down to WS1, so we may just hang around this 23.6 and the monthly pivot and this midterm fib and just continue a move down. New Zealand dollar CAD. So I have this triangle on the daily, which we are attempting to break, but it depends on what is going to happen with this daily candle. You can see that we've made a push down, but we've moved back just barely inside the triangle at this point, depending on how you draw it. We go down to the 4-hour. You can see on the 4-hour that was the break attempt of the triangle. We could see a pullback back up into this area and then break back outside of the triangle. If we do get kind of above these, we have a break above these, and we bounce off these, I'll be very careful until we get a solid break back below the 4-hour EMAs and the bearish Dynafib on the 4-hour, because we could bounce for a while between the 4-hour 55, 4-hour 200, and the daily 55 if we're going to see a move back towards the top of the triangle. NZD JPY, again, like AUD, there's probably better JPY pairs to trade. You can see that we have had a pullback to the Dynafibs on the 4-hour, so potentially a PFT off of weekly support 2 for a move back up. New Zealand dollar USD, we continued the downtrend, making a new low, but we're not too far down on the new low front. So again, for a pullback, probably to the weekly pivot, which the 4-hour 55 will have moved down to there. Again, if we continue up, again, this depends on what happens in the Asian session, but if we're still hanging around in this area, even down here on the Asian session, during the European session, we could see another counter trend on the shorter time frames to catch the pullback back up into this area. USD CAD, we basically closed last week where we were, but I did fib just last week. You could take it back to this low here, which is a touch of the bullish trend line. If you want to look for larger pullbacks, which would put you back for a reaction to the bearish Dyna fib or potentially the 4-hour 200. But if we stick to, oh, I don't want to move the trend line. If we stick to just fibbing last week to the current high, you can look for a reaction to the midterm fib and the weekly pivot, and potentially push down to the 4-hour 55. You can see the triangle on the daily, the bull trend line. I don't like the look up too much, but we did get a nice break of this bearish trend line and a continuation of, we got a good continuation, and then it doesn't look like NFP had too much of an effect there, but we've since pulled back and moved away. So potential counter shorts anywhere in this area. USD JPY, we've pulled back a little bit to start the week. We closed last week 275 pips higher. So another pair, be looking at the 4-hour 55. And not that I trade it, but you can take a look at Euro USD and see again, we continued the downtrend a little bit, closed 143 pips lower. We're currently pulling back. And of course, again, we could see a trade off of the 4-hour 55 to short. So that's kind of my overall look for this week. And I will, of course, post any trades that I take on any time frame in the Forex thread for the week. All right, have a good week, guys, and happy trades.